before we started doing the show, he said, "Don't you want to come and do the show?" I said, "Sure." I learned more about Jack than I ever did when he was living at home.
In the thunderous world of heavy metal, where distortion reigns and rebellion pulses through every riff, few figures loom as large or as ferociously uncompromising as Ozzy Osbourne. Nicknamed the Prince of Darkness, Ozzy isn't just a rock star, he's a living embodiment of the genre's most primal instincts. From his groundbreaking work with Black Sabbath to a solo career drenched in shadowy anthems, Ozzy has shaped the very DNA of metal itself. But while fans revere his theatrics and unfiltered persona, there's another side to Ozzy. Few dare to confront his blistering honesty and refusal to tolerate what he sees as musical betrayal. You see, for Ozzy, metal isn't a style, it's a sacred code. And those who violate that code, no matter how famous or influential, risk earning his eternal contempt. Behind the stage lights and reality TV cameos lies a man with an unwavering sense of authenticity, one who doesn't suffer. Musical fools. Over the decades, his critiques have morphed into legendary grudges, many of them public and scorching, laced with blunt language and loaded with disdain. Whether through backstage confrontations, radio interviews, or veiled shots during press tours, Ozzy has let it be known certain bands don't belong in his world of true metal. Today, we unveil 6 such names. Artists and groups that have reportedly provoked Ozzy's wrath to the point of blacklisting, mockery, or full-scale fallout. This isn't just about petty rivalry. It's about Ozzy's deeply rooted belief that heavy metal should remain raw, honest, and dangerous. These are the 6 bands that the Prince of Darkness reportedly couldn't stand. And the stories behind each feud reveal just how fiercely he's guarded the soul of metal for over 5 decades. And as you'll soon see, when Ozzy draws the line, there's no coming back. Asterisk, when Limp Bizkit exploded onto the scene in the late TS, rap rock energy and backwards cap bravado. They were the face of a new musical movement, but to Ozzy Osbourne they were a full-blown sonic travesty. The clash came to a head in 1998 during Ozzfest, the very festival that bore Ozzy's name, where Limp Bizkit's headline behavior and over-the-top demands reportedly rubbed the Prince of Darkness the wrong way. Witnesses claim Ozzy watched their performance with thinly veiled disgust, allegedly muttering, "What the bloody hell is this rubbish? They're jumping around like monkeys, but where's the actual music?" That one line, dripping with contempt, spread like wildfire backstage and eventually reached Fred Durst, sparking a rift that would never close. Ozzy's distaste wasn't merely personal, it was philosophical. In interviews, he blasted new bands that mistook screaming and swagger for real metal, calling them just noise with no musicianship. Though he stopped short of naming names, insiders knew exactly who he meant. The feud deepened as Sharon Osbourne, ever protective of Ozzy's brand, LLEGEDLY, took steps to prevent Limp Bizkit from gaining future billing at Ozzfest. Things escalated. Further, when Durst, never one to back down, reportedly dismissed Ozzy as past his prime in a radio interview. That comment, according to music journalist Dave Everly, set Ozzy off. He allegedly snapped. Durst wouldn't recognize real metal if it bit him on his red cap. Even in a 2019 interview, decades after the dust had supposedly settled, Ozzy couldn't resist throwing shade. When asked about the new metal era, he exhaled and said, "Some movements in music should stay buried where they belong." Fans didn't. Need translation? They knew exactly which band he was burying. Limp Bizkit's rap-rock fusion may have defined a generation of rebellious youth. But to Ozzy, it represented everything wrong with the evolution of heavy music, where he saw depth, darkness, and danger in true metal. He saw only empty noise in Limp Bizkit, and he made sure the world knew it. This wasn't just a difference in taste, it was a cultural divide that Ozzy marked with a fiery, unforgettable line in the sand. Asterisk, if there's one thing Ozzy Osbourne can't stomach, it's artificiality masquerading as rebellion, and to him, no band embodied that synthetic sheen more than Bon Jovi. At the height of the 1980s glam metal explosion, Bon Jovi emerged as MTV darlings with sky-high hair, sparkling white teeth, and arena-friendly anthems that soared up the charts. But while the world embraced hits like Livin' on a Prayer and You Give Love a Bad Name, Ozzy allegedly recoiled in disgust. According to longtime collaborator Jake E. Lee, Ozzy once exploded saying, "They're bloody dentists. With guitars, it's all smiles and pretty faces. Where's the darkness? Where's the truth?" This wasn't just musical snobbery, it was a rejection of what Ozzy saw as the commercial hijacking of rock. While Bon Jovi perfected the formula for mainstream success, Ozzy was in the trenches, battling inner demons and carving out brutally honest albums like The Ultimate Sin and No Rest for the Wicked. The tension boiled over at the 1987 Moscow Music Peace Festival, where both acts performed. Backstage accounts describe Ozzy glaring at Jon Bon Jovi's polished stage presence and whispering to his crew, "This isn't rock and roll, it's a bloody West End musical. The Disdain didn't end there." Later that year, during a German television special, Ozzy allegedly avoided all contact with the Bon Jovi camp, choosing instead to keep his distance in what many interpreted as a deliberate snub. Musically, the contrast was starkly descended. From the crushing doom of Black Sabbath, while Bon Jovi strummed their way to superstardom with catchy hooks and feel-good choruses, producer Max Norman, who worked with both camps, once revealed that Ozzy felt rock music was supposed to challenge listeners, not comfort them. And he viewed Bon Jovi as musical comfort food, pleasant but ultimately empty. In Ozzy's eyes, Bon Jovi represented everything metal was never meant to be: safe, shiny, and sanitized for mass consumption. Their success only deepened the wound, a reminder that sometimes the loudest voices in rock weren't the most authentic. And for Ozzy, who built his legacy on chaos, danger, and raw emotion, Bon Jovi was a betrayal proof that the heart of rock could be sold, polished, and packaged for the masses. He would never forgive that. It's one of the most ironic feuds in rock history. Ozzy Osbourne, the godfather of metal debauchery, allegedly turning against Mötley Crüe, the very band whose wild reputation was forged alongside his during their infamous 1984 joint tour. At first glance, it seemed like a match made in mayhem, two powerhouses of excess, sharing a stage and pushing each other to greater extremes. But behind the scenes, a bitter rivalry was brewing. According to Crüe bassist Nikki Sixx's autobiography, Ozzy viewed their outrageous behavior not as authentic chaos, but as performative rebellion. He allegedly confided to his road manager, "These lads are playing at being bad boys. I don't play at it, I bloody live it." That quote underscored what would become a growing resentment. While Mötley Crüe reveled in media attention for their wild antics, Ozzy felt they were imitating what he had already lived through in darker, more dangerous circumstances. The legendary ant-snorting incident, often told with a mischievous smirk in rock documentaries, was, according to insiders, not a moment of camaraderie, but a statement of dominance. Ozzy didn't just want to out-party them, he wanted to remind them who invented madness. Tour photographer Dean Kirkland recalled Ozzy backstage muttering, "These California boys think they invented madness. I was getting banned from entire countries while they were still in nappies." Musically, the distance between them widened. As Ozzy continued to evolve his signature sound into heavier, darker territory, Mötley Crüe began shifting toward glam metal glitz with albums like Theater of Pain and Girls. Girls, an engineer who worked on both bands' albums recalled. Ozzy's reaction when hearing one of Crüe's newer tracks: he reportedly hurled the cassette across the room and shouted, "Ow. They've gone from somewhat dangerous to bloody ridiculous." The split wasn't just about competition, it was about credibility. To Ozzy, Mötley Crüe had started as raw and rebellious, but had drifted into caricature. While their fans celebrated the band's over-the-top image, Ozzy saw it as betrayal style over substance, hype over heritage. For a man who bled for every note, every scream, and every chaotic headline, Mötley Crüe had crossed the line. What began as a bond of insanity had devolved into a feud of authenticity in Ozzy's world. Only one could be the true prince of excess. Few bands have polarized the rock world like Kiss, their larger-than-life personas, pyro-laden stage shows, and a merchandising empire that redefined music branding. But for Ozzy Osbourne, Kiss didn't just stretch the boundaries of rock. they stomped all over its soul. According to multiple insiders, Ozzy's contempt for KISS dates all the way back to the mid-1970s, when the two acts frequently crossed paths on tour. While Kiss was on the rise, dazzling audiences with elaborate theatrics and platform boots, Ozzy reportedly looked on with increasing irritation, allegedly saying they're turning rock and roll into a bloody circus. All that makeup and platform boots? It's like watching clowns with guitars. The friction only intensified as Kiss's commercial success skyrocketed, and their image became just as important as their music. Rock journalist Martin Popoff claims that Ozzy was appalled not just by the spectacle, but by what he perceived as the band's emotional emptiness. He reportedly once called a Kiss album all show, no soul, accusing them of packaging rock as a cartoon. The rivalry turned personal in the early 1980s, when Gene Simmons, always the businessman, allegedly approached Ozzy at a label party and advised him to market himself better. Ozzy's sharp retort, "I'm marketing music, mate, not bloody action figures," would become legendary. This brief but cutting exchange reflected their vastly different philosophies. Ozzy saw himself as an artist first, while Simmons unapologetically embraced capitalism. Their opposing ideologies continued to create distance between them for decades. While Kiss built an empire of lunchboxes, comics, and collectible dolls, Ozzy channeled his energy into pushing metal's boundaries and confronting personal demons through his music. Producer Max Norman, who worked with Ozzy extensively, recalled that Ozzy once listened to a Kiss track and muttered, "There's not one real emotion in the whole bloody thing." Though Kiss influenced generations with their anthems and aesthetics, Ozzy allegedly saw them as cheapening the raw intensity of rock, making the genre a brand rather than an art form. And for a man who had built his legacy on sincerity, pain, and rebellion, Kiss represented everything he feared rock could become: hollow, flashy, and soulless. Asterisk, in the late 1980s, Guns N' Roses were poised to take over the rock world with a raw, explosive energy that many said reminded them of early Black Sabbath. And when they landed a slot opening for Ozzy Osbourne on his 1988 No Rest for the Wicked tour, it looked like a perfect passing of the torch. But the honeymoon didn't last, according to Ozzy's former guitarist Jake Ely. Tensions flared almost immediately, most notably due to Axl Rose's chronic lateness and erratic behavior. Ozzy allegedly told his bandmates, "They're not dangerous, they're just bloody inconvenient." Things came to a head during a Philadelphia show where Rose reportedly kept the audience waiting nearly 2 hours. Ozzy, furious and embarrassed, stormed into their dressing room and accused them of disrespecting not only him, but also the fans and the spirit of rock itself. The very next day, Guns N' Roses were removed from the tour. The fallout wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. As GNR's fame grew and they embraced the spotlight, Ozzy reportedly grew more critical, viewing their rise as a betrayal of their gritty roots. In a 1992 Rolling Stone interview, Ozzy declared, "Some of these new bands start out authentic, then get famous and become exactly what they claim to hate," a line widely interpreted as a dig at Axl. The feud didn't fade with time. When Slash briefly joined Ozzy's band in 1995 after GNR's original lineup collapsed, Ozzy allegedly couldn't help himself, constantly asking for updates on Axl, often mocking him in the process. Drummer Randy Castillo recalled Ozzy joking, "I've been called crazy my whole life, but that bloke makes me look like the bloody Pope." Even years later, when Guns N' Roses reunited and began touring again, Ozzy allegedly dismissed the move as a cash grab, telling friends, "Reunions are for bands who've run out of ideas and need the money. I never stopped working long enough to need a comeback." What had begun as a hopeful alliance between generations of metal legends had devolved into mutual disdain. For Ozzy, Guns N' Roses became yet another cautionary tale of rebellion sold out for mainstream acceptance, and that, in his world, is the ultimate sin. Among all of Ozzy Osbourne's legendary feuds, none is more explosive, personal, or enduring than his alleged decades-long rivalry with fellow British metal icons, Judas Priest. It's a clash that cuts to the very heart of heavy metal's identity, a war not just of sound, but of legacy. According to rock historian Eddie Trunk, The tension first erupted in the late 1970s as Black Sabbath began to decline and Judas Priest rapidly ascended. Ozzy, already wrestling with substance abuse and instability, reportedly viewed Rob Halford as a threat to his throne. Allegedly fuming, they waited until I was down to step over me. The bitterness deepened when Priest recruited guitarist KK Downing, someone Ozzy had allegedly considered for his solo band. When the news broke, former manager Don Arden claimed Ozzy was so furious he smashed a hotel television and screamed about Priest poaching his people. But the rivalry didn't stop at behind-the-scenes drama. In 1986, during the Monsters of Rock festival, Halford allegedly made a snide remark about Ozzy's vocal abilities within earshot.
Ow.
Guitarist Phil Sousson later revealed that Ozzy had to be physically restrained, screaming, "I invented the music you're playing, you leather-clad copycat." The animosity continued into the 2000s, with both bands often refusing to appear on the same festival lineups. Even when Priest was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Ozzy allegedly scoffed, "Awards mean nothing." I've been connecting with real metal fans since before they knew what leather pants were. What sets this feud apart is its foundation in pride, competition, and wounded ego. Both bands were birthed in the crucible of British steel towns. Both clawed their way to the top, and both shaped generations of metalheads, but only one could wear the crown. And to Ozzy, there was never any doubt who that was. His loathing wasn't just about musical differences, it was about legacy theft. Judas Priest might have forged their own path, but in Ozzy's eyes, they had done it by standing on his shoulders without giving credit. It's a bitter truth that still reverberates across the metal world. A testament to how deeply Ozzy guards his place in history. Asterisk. When you trace the arc of Ozzy Osbourne's feuds from nu metal showboaters to glam rock poster boys, theatrical juggernauts, and even his own countrymen, you begin to see a pattern that reveals far more about Ozzy than it does about his adversaries. It's not just hatred, it's principle. For Ozzy, heavy metal is not just a genre, it's a creed. It's a raw and unfiltered way of life that should never be diluted, polished, or commercialized. His wrath has never stemmed from jealousy, but from what he perceives as betrayal of that sacred ethos. The flamboyant marketing of Kiss, the pop perfection of Bon Jovi, the choreographed chaos of Mötley Crüe, the corporate reinvention of Guns N' Roses, the perceived threat from Judas Priest, and the gimmicky aggression of Limp Bizkit, all of these, to Ozzy, are symptoms of a music industry that's tried to tame what was never meant to be safe. He didn't just live through the dark side of fame, he built his house there. And so when others arrived with clean boots and camera-ready smiles, he saw not kindred spirits but intruders. His words may have been harsh and his grudges legendary, but through it all, Ozzy has remained brutally consistent. Protect the soul of metal at all costs. These feuds, dramatic as they are, underscore one undeniable truth: Ozzy Osbourne may have made enemies, but he never compromised. And in a world where music so often bends to trend and money, perhaps that unwavering stance is the most metal thing of all.